All right. Patriot lawyer, constitutional Catherine Henry. Constitutional lawyer, Pat. Easy for you to say. Constitutional lawyer, Catherine Henry, is running late. She's got medical issues, serious medical issues, and she's been stuck on the phone with the insurance company. So she told me 2:30. I told you guys 2 o'clock because that's what we had arranged, and I don't want you to see 2 o'clock come and go, and I'm not live. So I am live. She's not going to be with us for another 25 minutes or so. If you haven't subscribed to Catherine Henry, you should. Obviously, she's a smart person, knows what she's talking about, is clear and concise. Hopefully she gets a billion jillion subscribers, because these are the type of people that really deserve a lot of subscribers. I mean, she might not have the entertainment chops like me, but like I said, she's going through some health issues, and she's been dealing with the insurance company. That's why she's running late. I sent her the invite. Hopefully she'll come on soon, and we'll go from there. Or it could be just like every woman I try to have on live. They don't show up, and I just sit here and pretend and try to convince myself that they really agreed to come on the show, but then never made it. So there she is. All right. Hi. How are you?
Good. How are you?
How do we sound? You sound good. You sound good.
Yeah, I'm trying this new mic combo here, so we'll see. Hopefully everything technologically works, but I have bad luck with that, so we'll see.
All right. So it was nice meeting you at Foshin's. This is a public service trial and Rogue Nation's trial. Did not even expect to see you there. When I did see you there and I recognized you, I'm like, what's going on? So can you kind of tell us what was going on there and how you got involved and all that good stuff?
Well, how I got involved is extremely unusual. So I'm not even a Florida licensed attorney, and because I'm not a Florida state licensed attorney, I therefore cannot be admitted to practice in the federal district courts that are in Florida. That's kind of how it works. So I'm admitted to practice in other federal district courts and the U.S. Supreme Court and other state
Florida
courts.
special?
What's that?
What makes Florida special that you can't practice
Well,
here?
each state is, you have to start with the state bar first. And so I've never attempted to get admitted down here. It costs thousands of dollars.
Okay.
And all the work I do has been on a donation basis for the last 5 years. So unless people want to start donating enough for me to be able to afford to take the Florida bar,
Understood.
it's not going to happen. So anyway, I Foshin started asking me, I want to say May of 2023, he started asking me some questions relating to the case, and there wasn't technically a case in court yet. And we went to court, but there was nothing on the docket, so it was kind of confusing. Anyway, met with somebody from the prosecutor's office, and it seemed like it took another 6 or 7 months. And then they finally had issued, turned it into an actual case at the end of 2023. And I went with him for moral support because, again, I'm licensed in federal courts and even the U.S. Supreme Court, but not this particular court, which is the Middle District of Florida Federal District Court. So I just sat and like where you guys were sitting, that's where I sat. And quite frankly, I wasn't even dressed in full, like attorney attire or anything, because I was just there supporting him. And he actually had been approved for a public defender, just like Rogue Nation. But because the two of them might have diverging interests, they can't have somebody in the same office. So they were going to appoint him a conflict of interest public defender, so somebody who's not technically in the federal public defender's office. And he just happened to ask, well, Your Honor, is it possible to have an attorney represent me or be standby counsel who's not admitted to this jurisdiction, but who is admitted to other jurisdictions? And so the magistrate kept asking him, questions about it, about me. And finally, he got to a point where he didn't know, how to exactly answer some of the questions. And so finally I just stood up and I said, well, Your Honor, he's actually talking about me. And I can answer any questions. And I said what jurisdictions I'm admitted to practice in, and, how long I've been an attorney. And so we actually had to go on a recess because I hadn't even looked at the court rule recently about, what it took to be admitted. I just knew that I most likely was not going to qualify. And there's a weird nuance to the rule that you could be admitted pro hoc vice for that case only. But the nuance is that if I was still living in Michigan, it's written that I could have been admitted pro hoc vice, but I live in
What
Florida
is pro
now.
hoc vice? Tell us what that means.
Admitted in to represent someone or maybe be standby counsel for that particular case only.
So an
that's
exception, kind of like an exception.
yeah, but it's just for that one case, so no
Okay.
other cases. So anyway, I fully expected that because of this weird nuance and that I technically was a Florida resident, the way that it was worded, it's like, well, it implies because I'm a Florida resident, I can't be admitted pro hoc vice. But the magistrate decided to admit me anyway. So it was the most bizarre thing because I've never been admitted to practice in a court without taking an exam or at least asking to be admitted. And I didn't ask. Foshin did. And so needless to say, the drive home, because, that's in Orlando. We both live in Volusia County. And so we, I think for almost every hearing, we've carpooled together. And so needless to say, the drive home was an interesting conversation because I'm like, thanks for throwing me under the bus. Why didn't you tell me you were going to ask for me to be admitted?
So when you were speaking for him that day, it had legal weight to it, so to speak, because the judge let it in?
So if you're talking about the day that you were there,
Yeah.
okay. So so I was admitted to be his standby counsel. Well, actually, I could have represented him, but well, as it is, I ended up putting in close to 100 hours. It was like 97 hours or something, and I haven't been paid a dime for that work. Hoping
Very nice to you.
I'm really hoping he's gonna do the right thing and throw a GoFundMe out there through his channel or something to help with those costs, because that's, especially when I was going through cancer, that was a lot of time and effort and
Do
energy.
you have a way that my fans could throw you a few bucks?
Absolutely. The easiest way is to go to my website, which is restorefreedomkh.com/donate, the donate page on my website. And it has links to different things. So if somebody
Do that
wants
again so I can type it in.
restorefreedomkh.com/donate.
Okay.
And anyway,
sorry, go ahead. If I threw you off, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So anyway, of course he didn't expect that he was going to that it would take me that many hours just to be standby counsel. But he, asked if I'd be willing to do it. And I said, yeah, if you can get some of your viewers to help try to contribute something to the work, because what he's doing is trying to help protect all of us and our rights, and make sure the government's doing their job, et cetera, so
Right.
yeah. And if my website doesn't look the best, I write everything. I do all the coding and the work.
It's all good. It's all good.
So
here's what it looks like, people. The link is in the description. If you got $5-10 to give Katherine, please do. We watched a couple of your videos before you came on, and you obviously know what you're talking about. And you're the type of lawyer that our movement needs. It's what all Americans need, but we especially look for, like we always say, where's the lawyer? Where's the unicorn that believes in the Constitution? So when
that's
we
me.
see, right. So when we see someone like you, honestly, if you scour the internet and look for civil rights lawyers, there's maybe 10, that are actually making videos and talking about it and so forth and so on. So,
yeah, and I would have done a lot more in the last year, but I don't know exactly what you guys talked about before I came on here, but being diagnosed with cancer last year and going through 3 major surgeries, including a double mastectomy and all that, and wound care for 10 weeks afterwards, and then another emergency surgery. I mean, it's just been hell. Just today, I planned to join you at 2:00, and I got this new bill yesterday, and of course, they didn't want to help me. They said, call my insurance, and they're like, well, and I'm like, come on, guys, like, that's simple math. I already met my deductible. I already met my out-of-pocket max, which is $7,000 or $6,900 for the year, plus the $5,700 they're making me eat on the treatments for the wound care. I'm like, guys, I'm well beyond the out-of-pocket max for last year. You guys need to figure this out. So anyway, it's just a nightmare because, like I said, 5 years of doing this on a donation basis, and we're paying more out of pocket than we're receiving in donations just to, keep the internet running so I could do these videos, just to keep, paper in the printer and, whatever. I have like the most bare bones operation as an attorney I've ever seen on the planet, quite frankly. Anyway,
yes.
So the case, to answer you, one of your questions though, before we kind of got sidetracked a little bit. So I was speaking the day that you were there. I had already been on the case since, so that was at the end of December, I think. And I'd been on the case for a little over a year officially, at that point. And like I said, I could have represented him completely, but I told him I couldn't take on that full responsibility without being able to be, paid for doing that. So I agreed to be a standby counsel. And I still did, the massive amount of research with court rules and just different things, the CFR, which was a huge thing in his case, Code of Federal Regulations. That was the main threat.
Can you talk about the specifics of that case and your opinion as to
possibly, but let me finish. My brain won't do too well if I don't finish this thought. But so at any rate, doing all that stuff, getting information, giving him suggestions, going through, there's a lot of pleadings. The amount of documents on this case alone, the discovery was insane. I think it was thousands of pieces of paper. I didn't even print all that. Usually I do. But anyway, so we're talking stacks of paper, right? And then multiple hearings. I can't even count how many hearings we ended up having. But anyway, so I was his standby counsel. So it depends on the judge as to how they treat that relationship. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb is if you have standby counsel, that standby counsel can question you if you're, let's say you're the defendant, they can question you when you're on the stand to make it an easier question and answer. So you're not like trying to struggle to tell the story and worry about any procedural stuff. I would assist him on, when to make an objection and what it was based on. Sometimes those stuff happens so quick on the fly that I would just stand up and interject and make an objection, or I would make not an emergency motion, but something that very quickly I needed to put something on the record and I need to further explain it. Sometimes I didn't want to, because he doesn't get 2 bites at the apple, so to speak. So if he's already like making a motion or something like that, I'm not supposed to be the one that then speaks and clarifies for him. The judge let me get away with that a little bit. There were some times where I was like, "Ooh, I know what he's trying to say, and it's not hitting home, and I know what the judge needs to hear." So there was after the finding of guilt in that case and the motions that were made afterwards, there were a few times that I spoke up and spoke on his behalf. And then the rest of it, I would ask maybe for just a moment of recess, 30 seconds so I could go up and point to notes and say, "Hey, dude, you were supposed to say this part," and, kind of help him that way. So anyway, that's why it probably looked it looked vastly different from what Rogue Nation and his attorney were doing, right? His attorney was speaking on his behalf entirely until the judge specifically asked Rogue Nation if he wanted to say anything on his own behalf, which was actually just in the sentencing phase, not in the guilt phase. So anyway, so I spoke more than I probably should have, but it's just, there's no, it's a very gray line, right? And it's super hard to know for sure. And I'd rather err on the side of protecting his rights and speak up and say something than to, or know that I've at least given him everything and that he understands, he knows what he's supposed to say. And maybe he's just choosing for whatever tactical purpose not to say the things that I was suggesting that he say, which happened a bit too. So anyway, that's kind of to answer your question there. But yeah, I went with him to, I want to say it was to every single hearing. There might have been one with my surgeries and whatnot that I couldn't make, but that one might have ended up being rescheduled anyway. So anyway.
No, there was no jury, right?
No, this was, so I'm not sure that a jury would have been beneficial in this situation, quite frankly, because it was so legally convoluted, right? Legally, the way the whole case, and it's too complicated. And I'm going to start by saying, for those of you who have never seen me before and don't know much about me, I'm normally on my A game. Like, I can say statutes and cases and all kinds of things, and constitutional provisions, and I can quote them and cite them, and I can, chew you up and spit you out if I need to. But having, going through cancer right now, I am so physically, mentally, and emotionally burnt out and not at my full game. So I apologize. This is not going to be the most eloquent explanation of things.
Not apologize.
But see, now I lost where I was going. Explaining.
That's okay. So let me ask some questions then.
Oh, the jury case, having it been a jury.
Yeah.
So the way the court rules read is because it was considered, I want to say like a class 4 misdemeanor or something. I can't remember all the details. But in the federal
lower
system,
than if it goes up to first, it's worse, right?
Yeah. So it was like the lowest end of misdemeanor possible. And apparently the federal court rules are written so that you are not guaranteed a jury trial when it's at that low of a level, which to me is inherently unconstitutional, because if you are facing, quite frankly, any criminal punishment, but absolutely if you're facing even 5 minutes in jail, then you have to have the right to a jury trial.
Yeah.
And then it should be up to you to decide whether you want to exercise that right. Now, in this particular case, there were so many constitutional issues that would have been yet another one to try to fight. And I think in the end, I don't remember our conversations specifically about that point, because that would have been, over a year ago, but it is something he and I talked about. And, I think it's just, his case was so convoluted with the legalities that having a jury involved, first of all, a jury, if those issues even made it in front of a jury, which unfortunately they would have, no average person would be able to grasp all that. And it's easier, unfortunately, in our system, it's easier to hear, oh, well, there was a sign. Look, there's a sign with a picture that says no recording. So therefore, if he's recording and he recorded a video showing that there's no recording, oh, he must be guilty. So I think it would have hurt,
next question.
Their case about that. Now, here's the thing. If it was a scenario where a jury trial would have been available or not, either way, they should have both won on their motion to dismiss prior to it ever getting to the point of trial.
Why?
Because they're legal issues. So anytime you have a case, it could be a state level case or a federal case. If you have legal issues, not factual issues, and it could be civil, criminal, it doesn't matter the case. If it's a purely legal issue, then those are supposed to be handled in pre-trial. 95% of the time, we're talking about something that needs to be raised as a pre-trial issue that the judge is responsible for resolving, because juries are never responsible for the legal determinations. They are responsible for factual determinations. Did this person actually commit this crime? Or, did this person commit this intentional tort? And if it's a civil case of some kind, did the person actually breach a contract for on the factual side of things? But if it's a legal question that has to be answered, it's the judge's job to answer those questions. Now, far too many judges in my own case that I had from Election Day 2020, and in many other cases, including this case, unfortunately, judges will either deny motions simply because they don't want to deal with them, or like a motion to dismiss, or they'll kick the can down the road. And that's what happened in this case with Rogue Nation and Foshin. They both made motions to dismiss, and the judge did not deny them initially, just kept moving them, and essentially said, well, we'll have trial, and then I'll decide what the outcome of these motions is. And the thing is, on a motion to dismiss, on a proper motion to dismiss, and depending on, there's I'm going to say roughly 10 different things that you can, legal reasons why you can file a motion to dismiss. And in each of them, they're a little bit different, but generally speaking, the whole point of a motion to dismiss is that if you are in fact entitled to have that motion granted, so the case is dismissed, it's supposed to save you from having to go through the heartache and the headache and the financial and the physical and emotional, trauma of having to go through the whole thing.
So they shouldn't be ignored.
They shouldn't kick the can down the road and wait till after trial to decide on a motion to dismiss that was filed ahead of time.
How can he legally kick it down the road? I thought he had to reply, or is there no function that forces him to reply to a motion?
Yeah, so procedurally it's different in state court from federal court, and it's really a nightmare, because a lot of the times what you're left with when you have a judge or a magistrate who's doing what they're not supposed to be doing during a case is, you have to lay the foundation, you have to say on the record or file in pleadings, in documents with the court, what your concerns are, what your arguments are, your objections, whatever. Yes, that's the baseline. And then oftentimes, depending on what the issue is, if it is urgent enough, then you're dealing with what's called an interlocutory appeal. So you have two kinds of appeals. You have an appeal that happens, that most people think of, that happens after the case is over. And then you have an appeal that would be while the case is actually still pending, but you're like, whoa, hit the brakes, there's something horribly wrong. The whole thing needs to be stopped or paused at this point because this one piece has to be fixed. If this one piece isn't fixed, then the whole trial, the whole court proceedings at this stage are, they're broken, and it's not going to be fair to one or both parties. So that's probably what he would have been looking at, is an interlocutory appeal to the next highest court on his motion to dismiss. And essentially, because it's a little harder when you have a judge that just doesn't decide, right? Than when you have a judge that makes a decision, and then you have a decision, usually in writing, and then you can, submit your arguments and say, okay, well, they denied it based on this reason, but that's not legally sound because of whatever, right? The statute says this, or the Constitution says this, or, the case precedent says this. But when the judge doesn't make a decision, it does make the job harder to prove that the judge made the wrong decision by not making a decision. You know what I mean? You're kind of proving something that doesn't exist. So
right. Trying to prove a negative. So the way you read the law, and I know the way you read the law yourself, are we allowed to record inside of Social Security Administration or not?
Absolutely. Now, the difference is you're not allowed. So you're allowed to record in any federal building where there's no order, specific rule, or I forget what there's a series of like 4 words there. So there might be some sort of actual rule that's been properly promulgated, although don't get me on that, because administrative rules and regulations are entirely unconstitutional anyway. But even speaking their language,
right.
Then as long as there has been a rule that's properly promulgated and gone through their process to be different than what the GSA sets out. But anyway, with the way that the federal law reads, and the way that the Code of Federal Regulations, which is their rules, read, is there has to be some specific rule. If you're talking about a building entrance, lobby, corridor, auditorium. Basically, if you think about it this way, where's the general public allowed to go without having some sort of special pass, right? It's not where the confidential discussions and actions and things are supposed to take place. You're not going to be giving a Social Security Administration employee your Social Security number sitting right in the lobby. I wouldn't do that. I'd be like, are you effing crazy? No.
I think they actually do that now, and that's why they're freaking out about it, because everything was off camera for decades. And I think they started saying, hey, what is your social and what is your driver's license number?
Well,
what is your full,
at the
they say within
kiosks,
earshot.
yeah,
Sorry.
so they don't, as far as what I've seen, they don't do that. They do it at a kiosk. So in the locations that they were videoing in this particular scenario, the kiosks were actually away from the general public, so that when you put in your Social Security number to sign in for the day, no one is seeing that part, and you're shielded. Now, I could tell you that for me, when I have to go have any business done at my local Social Security office, which is in Port Orange, Florida, here in Volusia County, then the kiosk is like, I walk up to the kiosk, the security desk is right next to it, and who's right behind me? Oh, just the entire lobby. Literally everyone that's in the room, except for the security guard, because he's, too close and right next to it. Everybody else behind me can see what I'm putting in. So you gotta, even though it does the little asterisks on the screen, they could still see what you're typing in with, you have to hit the buttons. And then quite frankly, when you look at the screen, I'm like, well, crap, did I hit the right buttons? I mean, I know what my Social Security number is, but I don't have my kids' numbers memorized. And it'd be nice to look up and, okay, I typed it. Yep. And look at my phone and make sure, or whatever, you know what I mean? It'd be nice to know that I did it right before, I hit the enter button. Anyway, it's just, that there's a lot of that kind of nonsense going on. But
let me ask this, because we get a lot of hate, as you can tell, because people are brainwashed status. But there's an A, B, and C section in the, what is it called, the CFR?
That particular CFR, yep, it has an A, B, and C section.
Can you explain that, please?
Oh, I wish I would have known we were going to talk about it. I don't have it in front of me, but essentially what it does is it breaks down things.
I'm going to put the link in the description here in a second, but sure. Okay, go on.
So it breaks it down into 3 parts. C is talking about those places that are generally open to the public. So lobbies, corridors, foyers, building entrances, auditoriums, where literally anybody who doesn't even necessarily have any Social Security transactions to do that day, they could be there and not be a problem. Like, you could physically be in there and they can't stop you. Now that's separated out from, I think they call it tenant occupied space. And that's because the way the country does it, any kind of federal agencies, they don't own the buildings. So the GSA basically is owning the buildings, and they lease out to tenant agencies. They lease out to the Social Security Administration or FEMA or whomever to rent that space. So if you have something where it's like the actual office areas where the business is being transacted, where you're going to hand over your documents, right? That's not open to the general public in the sense that anybody can't just walk over there while I'm there having my business transacted, right? That's like a one at a time appointment kind of a situation. Or behind the back doors, right? Where the supervisors are, and presumably where they print the Social Security cards or whatever. I don't know all the things that they do back there, but where they keep people's documents and things like that. That's, a high security type of area. It's like common sense. Duh. No, the general public shouldn't be allowed to be back there or sitting right next to somebody with a video camera. Like, what are you talking about today, sir? No.
Yeah.
But
and none of us do that. Even though they try to create that narrative about us. None of us do that. None of us get in anybody's business. If it's anything, it's them coming at us.
I will say there was a particular moment of one of the videos, not of a video I have seen at some point. I'm not going to shout out names to who, but there was a First Amendment auditor who was in a Social Security Administration office, and they had two different sides. I don't know if it was an Orlando office. I don't remember which location, but anyway, it was like two different sides, and all that was separating on the inside was just, you know, those temporary what do you call them, office cubicle barrier
Yeah, yeah.
walls or whatever.
Mhm.
And so there were people actually meeting with people at a window right on the other side of that. And on this side of it, there weren't windows set up. That was still kind of like the general area where you could walk around. But a particular First Amendment auditor, I think this is the only time I've ever seen him do this. He lifted his camera over and was like kind of looking at things. At the time, my only thought is he probably didn't know until he later saw the footage, because he couldn't see over that, right?
Yeah.
So he was probably not realizing there was literally a person freaking out on the other side of that wall because they're transacting business. And, you know, it's not right on the other side, but it was close enough that sure, a camera could easily zoom, and, you know, and so at any rate, I think accidents can happen like
Sure.
that, and that's why
But the
you just have to
overwhelming
be
majority
careful.
of us know better than to get in people's business and don't
Yes,
intentionally stick our camera down on top of somebody. Well,
right.
yeah, okay.
So anyway, that's A and B of that three-part thing that you were talking about, A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
C is the one that says you are allowed to record as long as you are in a building entrance, foyer, lobby, auditorium. But A and B are talking about if it's for commercial or non-commercial purposes, and then if whether you have permission from the tenant agency, but it's talking in tenant occupied space. So again, that part where it's not open to just the general public just to walk in and mill around and do what they want to do,
It means
right?
the restricted areas.
Yeah, it's in the areas where you're literally going to be transacting your confidential business, or even in the spaces behind that. And so it's talking about non-commercial purposes. You have to have verbal permission from the tenant agency to be recording there. And for commercial purposes, which presumably would reach a much broader audience, you have to have written permission from the tenant agency. I think that was part B. So I think it's, you know, the verbal permission, the written permission was A and B, and then C is just saying, but if you're in a building entrance, foyer, lobby, you know, auditorium, then you don't have to have permission because you're in an area open to the general public, which
So,
just makes sense.
right. So basically First Amendment free press. And
Mm-hmm.
so some people are saying A and B negate C. This is another argument I'm hearing. A and B negate C.
No, in fact, the case that
That's silly, right?
they are separate. There's different, and again, this is where I wish I was really up at the top of my A game, but I'm going to do my
That's
best
okay.
here.
That's okay.
There are legal principles and concepts that are generally known in the legal community that basically, when you have a statute, now this is a CFR, but same interpretation rules apply. When you have a statute that specifically lists out, you know, a list of things that those, especially, you know, depending on how it's written, you have to pay attention. Where are the commas? Where, you know, does it say and or in between the items, etc.? And the way that that particular one is written is it's saying it's one or the other of those three. You are either in a building entrance, lobby, corridor, etc., or you are in one of the other you know, back room type areas, right? A little bit more restricted areas. And so that thing, that location, then you break it down into, okay, so if you're in one of the more restricted areas, the tenant space,
That's when
then
A and B go into effect.
that's, are you looking at, you know, commercial use, or are you looking at non-commercial use? And therefore, you know, if it has to be written permission or verbal permission.
In areas not open to the general public is what A
Correct.
and B refer to. And then C
Exactly.
just basically refers to assembled in public, free press in public, gathering content, not expressive activity, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, and I don't like to hammer too much just on the right of free press, because
Mhm.
there's a lot of other aspects to the First Amendment, right?
Sure.
And so even just the ability to assemble, for example. So as long as you are not assembling in a way that's getting in the way of somebody else being able to transact the business that they are lawfully entitled to do. You know, say it's a Social Security Administration and they need to come in and request a new Social Security card. As long as whatever you're doing to, you know, if you're staging a protest or whatever, you're just peacefully assembling, as long as you're doing that in a way that's not stopping people from lawfully being able to transact their own business and you're not impacting the rights of others, then you're good.
Right.
But I would say let's take a step back from that and look at just what a lot of people have been erroneously charged with. I have been unlawfully and unconstitutionally charged with criminal trespass, where they say, oh, this is, you don't own this property and you've been told you have to leave, you have to go. And if you don't go, you're going to be held responsible for criminal trespass. Now, here's the thing. There's two aspects to this that we need to remember. Number one, it doesn't matter if it's owned by the government or not. If it's property open to the general public, then you cannot be held responsible for criminal trespass if you are not interrupting the normal flow of operations there, right?
Including private property?
And if you want to go to a store, so this came up a lot during COVID when people were told you can't come here unless you're wearing a mask, and we're going to criminally trespass you if you don't leave if you're not wearing a mask. Well, no, you can't. I mean, there's a whole nother world of discrimination rules that apply, but you can't say somebody is criminally trespassing if it's like a Menards up north, or I'm trying to think of non-local, but like a Walmart. Yeah, well, that's a South thing. So depending on,
Walmart.
But a store, right? A Walmart, a Sam's Club, something like that. Now, actually, those two, I will say, even though we're using those as an example, Walmart and Sam's were the two that did not discriminate against me during all of COVID and when our governor shut down the state of Michigan and said everybody has to wear masks and it's the law. BS, an executive order is not a law. Right. So actually, I'm going to switch it to Target because that's nationwide and yet they're assholes. So anyway, so if you go into a Target and it's a privately owned company, if you are there, like say you're there protesting how they advertise sexually inappropriate things to children and you have a shirt or a sign and you are standing somewhere near the children's area or near the front door, but you were standing in a way, say it's just you. Okay. It's just you, you're one person. You're not extraordinarily large. You don't have like a sign that's taking up the whole walkway. You are leaving it plenty open for people to be able to walk in and walk out. You're not bothering other customers. You're just standing there. If somebody approaches you, you speak to them, but otherwise you're not chasing people down and be like, don't you dare buy this stuff, right? You're not harassing anybody. You are quietly and peacefully standing there. They cannot charge you with criminal trespass because that would violate your right under the 14th Amendment to be able to be in a place that is open to everybody else and the general public. The Supreme
They can't ask
Court,
you to leave?
They can, if you are not bothering anybody, if you are not actively stopping the flow of operations there, if they are the ones causing the problem, right, which often is what happens, if you are not the one stopping the flow of normal business operations there and you're not impeding on the rights of anybody else that's there to transact business, they cannot require you to leave simply because you are physically present. Okay.
Even if you're pissing off customers with your shirt.
Even if you are making everybody mad because they don't like what you have on your shirt or whatever, your hat or whatever.
Okay.
So
that's crazy and interesting. I know a lot of us didn't know that.
Well, and so that's something to keep in mind, that if any one of you finds yourself in this situation and you're like, crap, you're in a situation, try to prepare yourself ahead of time with some of these things. On my website, if you take off the donate part and you go to resources, there's a bunch of different resources, or even at the top there, you can see the resources tab. If you go to case documents, that's that first clickable link there. You could see several different cases and things that I've had the time to put on there. Oh, I have to change the Ormond Beach case because it's extended into 2025. Anyway, Allegan County. If you click on the Allegan County, it's the second one down. Scroll down a little bit. There's some videos where I talk about it. Okay, but there we go. We start seeing documents. And I have a bunch of motions, I have appeals, I have all kinds of things. Anyway, if you
Wow.
see, yeah, I try to put everything that I could on there for people to see. So you have examples. Those are when I showed up to a polling precinct on election day as an attorney. And they knew I was coming as an attorney to talk with the sheriff's deputies because they were morons and didn't know what the law was. And so I show up as an attorney and to talk with them. And they're like, yeah, okay, yep, let's talk about it. And I said, okay, well, I'll print the laws and I'll show up and we'll talk. And they refused to talk to me. And they just kept telling me to leave. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not here to stay. I was here to talk to you, but I'm not going to let you illegally arrest the people that are here lawfully doing what they're doing, circulating these petitions. So I didn't say I wouldn't leave. I just said, just let me talk to you about the law first. And they unlawfully and violently arrested me in front of my then 6-year-old daughter. And it took me 2 years to get the case dismissed. And it was hell. I mean, I have PTSD with law enforcement and, quite frankly, with the court system. I had 5 prosecuting attorneys acting against me in unlawful ways throughout the course of those 2 years. I had 2 district court judges, 1 circuit court judge, a court of appeals involved. I mean, anyway, lots of different things going on there with that. But the documents that I have on that page are for you guys to be able to use. I talk about those cases. I talk about those, and they're U.S. Supreme Court cases. And why that's important is because that is binding across every state in our whole country. So you could be in Florida, Michigan, Texas, New York, Rhode Island, Alaska, doesn't matter. You could be in Commie, California, and they are still bound to follow those precedents. I won't say it's case law because judges don't get to make law. But anyway, that case precedent that comes out of the U.S. Supreme Court. And so anyway, I talk a little bit more in detail. I cite them. There's a lot of that going on there. So anyway, avail yourself of, look at things, kind of get the feeling, and kind of, if you aren't sure if one of the documents is going to help you, one of my briefs that are on there, then if you open it up, there's always like a table of contents section of the argument. You could be able to see, oh, okay, this one's talking about trespass, or this one's talking about whatever, right? So anyway, those are things that I put on there for free so that people either who have attorneys who maybe aren't comfortable or used to knowing how to argue the constitutional issues, you can read some of these things yourself and work with your attorney to make sure those constitutional arguments are included. Or if you're representing yourself, or even better yet, hopefully before it gets to the point of needing actual representation, hopefully you're so well informed on what your rights are that you can then educate calmly and respectfully educate the law enforcement or government personnel involved so that you can avoid a case. Because that's really what it comes down to. That's where a true win is, right? It's not having to be arrested and spend thousands of dollars. I mean, even for my case alone, I had to spend $6,000 out of pocket, not on attorneys, on all the motion filing fees and getting transcripts and getting copies of the records and everything just to be able to file. I had multiple rounds of interlocutory appeals that ugly while the case is pending kind of appeals that we were talking about. I had tons of that going on. And meanwhile, I've had maybe 2,500 of that that people have donated to try to help me cover those costs. But I was there as an attorney to help people for free because they were actually circulating a petition that I wrote in 2020 to stop the government bullshit. I wrote a statewide constitutional amendment petition that would have drastically changed the course of history, not only in Michigan, but in the entire U.S., where there would be it did a bunch of things. I won't even waste time going into it, but it would have held government officials accountable. It would have gotten rid of qualified immunity in the state of Michigan. It would have given standing to average citizens to be able to bring claims in court when government officials do wrong, whether it's a guy like this, a lovely Deputy Langlois, or whether it's the governor of the state of Michigan or whatever. I'm in the gray shirt there with the black sleeves underneath.
can we take a 2-minute break? I'll let this video play. I just got to use the restroom real quick, and I'll be right back.
Sure.
Thank you, Catherine.
That's not how it works. You're very
you already are violating the law.
I'm not violating any law.
You're violating the law. You are not even following the resolution from the county or from the township. Okay. The one that you guys gave us earlier, the one that you were reading from. Did you read it? It says you can't stop us. You're not touching my car.
Yeah, we're gonna.
No, you're not.
So are you willing to leave? Yes.
You have no right to do this.
Are you willing to leave?
You do realize it's abusive process and malicious prosecution.
Okay.
Yes, you're violating federal. I don't care. You're on the hook, not him.
No preference. Okay.
You have no right to do this to me, Rod.
You guys can hear me if anybody is out there. I have Sheriff's Deputy Langlois from the Allegan County Sheriff's Department saying he's going to arrest me and he's going to tow my car because we are here. Let me see if I can switch this camera around.
And I've shook this guy's hand before too.
There we go. All right, guys. So he's here trying to arrest me. This is our setup. So we are nowhere near the 100-foot mark, which is the drain in the road, right between where that silver truck and that car are pulling out. That's the 100-foot mark where you can't be past it in the other direction, because those doors right there are the doors to get into the precinct. And the law clearly says we can't be within 100 feet. We also can't be impeding anybody from getting in. So they are, he said, going to arrest me if we don't leave right now, because the township owns this property and the township said that we have to leave. Funny thing is, the township has a resolution that specifically says we have the right to be here. And he doesn't want to read the resolution again. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to read the law or the constitutional provisions that allow us to be here. So
Typical cop. So before we get into this, or before we continue, we're on live stream here with constitutional patriot attorney Katherine Henry. Hold on, I don't want to ask you any questions yet because I want to get a few. She's awesome. She's great. I'm going to ask her a bunch of stuff like how she got into the Constitution, because, you know, even most lawyers nowadays, they're not into the Constitution, so to speak. They're more into their focus of law, like whether it's a employee, whether it's immigration law, whether it's family court, whether it's tax law, but specifically constitutional lawyers are few and far between. They're kind of like unicorns. So you said, like, we were doing the Target example early. Oh, by the way, subscribe to Katherine Henry on YouTube channel on YouTube, and also go to this website here. Let me put it back up for them real quick. Let's go to this website here. And her website is restorefreedomkh.com. And this is how you can support her on this page. Oh, there's another support page somewhere. Anyway,
yeah, you could click the donate from there. It's so the shop donate.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, and so right before this, we were talking about which I didn't know, that if you're do you have to be shopping? Do you have to be actively looking for stuff when you're shopping at a Target, or can you just sit there and stand there with a shirt with a political message on it?
Again, the most important thing is, now I'm not saying there can't be other things that they charge you with. So there potentially could be other things that they charge you with, but criminal trespass is what they most commonly resort to. Mm-hmm. And you cannot be held responsible for criminal trespass when you are not, when you're in an area that is open to the general public during the time that it's open to the general public. And, so you can't go to, a publicly owned, museum or something like that after hours, right? I mean,
Sure.
If it actually has hours where it's closed, then you can't go there during the time it's closed. But if you're there during the time it's open to the general public, then you have the right to, so Costco, those assholes, that's a great example.
Well, that's a membership place, though.
It is.
Okay.
But so here's the thing. And it does complicate it because it's membership, but I had a Costco membership. I've been Sam's Club girl my whole life, basically. But when we lived in Hudsonville, I had a Costco 10 minutes from me, and the other ones were each Sam's Club was 30 minutes away. And I was like, come on. So I decided I would also join Costco. So I joined in March, and I think I was a member for a whole year, maybe 2 years before COVID happened. And then Governor Whitmer shut the whole state down and said you had to have masks when you go places, blah, blah, blah. So now this whole time, Sam's and Walmart didn't give me trouble. And in fact, I had a doctor's note from June of 2020, saying that I cannot medically wear a mask for various reasons. So I had a doctor's note. So that gives me those ADA protections and things like that. But anyway, so I went to Costco to try to shop, and they wouldn't let me shop because I didn't have a mask. In fact, one guy actually did let me in at one point, and then they were chasing me down through the store after I already had a cart of groceries. And I'm like, at this point, I'm going to check out. And they were harassing me all through the checkout. And I'm like, you can't do this. So anyway, I decided, you can, their membership policy is you can get a refund as long as you cancel that membership, even on the last day of that membership year. So I was like, I'll give it some time. Maybe they'll come to their senses, whatever. So that didn't happen, right? So it was March, April, May, June, July. We get to the next March of 2021. And I was like, okay, I haven't been able to go this whole year. I want a refund, and I want them to stop charging my card. So you go online, you can't do it online. You try to call in, they say, no, you can't cancel your membership. You have to go into the club to cancel your membership. So
and they won't let you in.
So what did we do? We sent my husband in, and he wasn't a mask wearer either, but he didn't have a medical exemption. So he, I think he put the mask on just to be able to go to the counter to cancel the membership. And they got through the whole, waited in line, went through the whole rigmarole, and they said to him, oh, you're not the main member. You're not the primary member on the membership. You can't cancel this. The primary member looks like it's Katherine, and she'll have to come. And he's like, well, you won't let her in the building without a mask. So, what are you going to do here? So they would not cancel the membership. So not only were they going to keep my, whatever it is, like $150, but they were going to charge me every year and for all eternity. I was like, oh, hell no. So I was waiting across the street at a mall. I was running errands, and I had to drop what I was doing, come all the way over to the Costco, go in line, wait in this line. The guy at the front door was like, you can't come in here. And he's saying, we're going to arrest you, and we're going to get you trespassed and all this stuff. And I was like, if your channel's supposed to be, PG rated, I apologize, but I'm getting angry. So I'll probably tell you some of the things that actually came out of my mouth, but you're not going to fucking stop me, because you guys refused to cancel my membership. You refused to allow my husband to cancel the membership on our behalf. You have to let me in, because you cannot continue to force me into a contract with you. You will give me my money back. You will cancel my membership, and I will never come back to this horrible, awful place to deal with any of you dumbass people ever again. Don't worry about it. And he's trying to chase me down, and I get up to the counter, and finally, when there was a lady there was nobody that we had to wait for at the time. I had dealt with her before. She was pretty chill. And anyway, once he saw that she was dealing with me, and then he had to make sure that people, he had to scan their receipts, right, and make sure they weren't stealing. Then he was like, oh, and he got pulled in the other direction. So I was like, thank God. And so she actually was nice. She was like, yeah, I apologize for that. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. All I want to do is cancel, because you guys won't let me in to shop. So anyway, if they had tried to pull that bullshit where they were going to try to arrest me, and I had a paid membership. It's the same thing. It's like, no, you can't do that, because I had a right to be there. Right. And then I was like, fine. All I was saying was, I wasn't pushing the issue. I was like, just let me cancel then. Let me get my money back. It's as simple as that.
Right. You're 100%. Now, let me ask you, here's Mike Fasano, my local tax collector. I beat him twice in court. They tried to do criminal trespass, gave me a trespass warning. If you don't leave, we're going to arrest you. The reason you need to leave is because you're recording in the public areas of the tax collector's office. Well, the Pasco County, where I live in Florida, they passed an ordinance. Their trespass ordinance says any sign a government building puts up can be a reason. Any sign, like they can write no black people. And they actually said this in my hearing. The cops have to come and trespass you for it. So they decided that we're not allowed to record in the public. I took them to court twice and won. First one was restricted. The second one I actually won. The third time I went in, the security guy got in my face and said, you ain't nothing but a little bitch. I got that recorded. I sent it in to them. So they sent me a letter saying you're banned from all five tax collectors' offices now. And then I called the sheriff. I said, am I trespassed? No. When's the appeal hearing? They just said you're banned. Like they wrote me a generic letter in regular mail, and they're using the trespass. First it's a trespass. Now they're just saying don't come here anymore. Like that can't be legal, but I don't have your skills to. I'm sure if they gave this to you within a couple of weeks, you would whip them up into a frenzy and make them regret they ever lived. Me, on the other hand, I don't know what to do. So I'm in there. I'm doing records requests. I have a body cam sometimes. And even when I don't record in there, they lose their mind and trespass me. They don't want me in there, period. And they show it and they sick their security guards on me. So.
And that's not okay. And quite frankly, here's the thing, even with Social Security. So I agree that you shouldn't be able to record other people's stuff. But here's something else. And this is from a perspective of, now I've not been a constitutional attorney for my entire career. I started doing family law and working in cases where kids are, the abuse and neglect cases, divorce cases, ugly custody cases. I was a guardian ad litem before I was ever an attorney. So I've represented kids in vulnerable adults. I've done all kinds of things, right? And then I used to draft basic estate plans and dealing with people that are trying to prepare for the worst of times and when they have diminished capacity, et cetera, et cetera. So given that history of my professional background, I'm thinking of scenarios where people go into any kind of government office and they're asking questions or they're trying to get something done and they're being given information. Well, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be given the wrong information by some dumbass government employee who hasn't bothered to actually read whatever the law is that they're supposed to be enforcing or applying. Whether they mean well or not, they're often given wrong information. But regardless, even if somebody's given correct information, and this is the bigger point in my mind, it's overwhelming. I mean, no matter what kind of government office you're going to, whether you're dealing with having an insane amount. I mean, I pay like $3,800 a year for property taxes. And this is a 1,300 square foot house, 1,300 square feet. And it doesn't have like this in-ground pool. It doesn't have all kinds of, it's a 1/4 of an acre property.
That's like a used car. That's like a used car every year you're paying in property tax.
Yes, it is. It is insane. So it's overwhelming, if I wasn't able to, and this year I was really close to not being able to pay that. In fact, it's either that or my homeowner's insurance, whatever is on my credit card. I'm doing the pay every month towards it on the credit card, which we never do. We always pay everything in full. But I mean, shoot, if I had over $14,000 in medical expenses last year alone, and then, you have homeowners insurance that started at $1,800 and is now whatever, over, $3,100, and you have $3,800 in property taxes, and everything's hitting at once. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So even if I'm going to feel overwhelmed and I understand the ins and outs of what they're doing and how to read and break down bills and all that, I can only imagine the average person going into, a government facility, especially. So anyway, you have that where, and I could only imagine if I was having to go into a government facility while I was going through cancer. Cause like I told you guys, I'm not at my A game. I'm not remembering things as well as normally I can remember every single detail about something.
I know.
And so I'm not at my A game with that. I can't remember those details, or I can't, maybe somebody's explaining an aspect to me that, you have to really be intelligent and be able to cut through and have that ability to really have that analytical mind to get through all the red tape and government bullshit and be able to go, okay, I see what you're saying is the required procedure.
The ambition.
Yeah.
The stamina, ambition, the heart. And as you get older, and especially if you got a terminal, a thing going on there,
yeah,
I don't even know how you're still just sitting here talking to me. You should be chilling, in my opinion, but I appreciate it more than you know.
Well, so my thought is, if you're the average person and, you're going through something like that and you're overwhelmed, or maybe your spouse just died and your whole world is collapsing and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. I just know I have to do something at Social Security, or I have to do something with our taxes or whatever. and you're sitting there trying to get everything figured out and you're overwhelmed, I would want to record that, right? If it were me, I wouldn't want somebody else recording it to put on some YouTube channel. No, I would want to be able to record it so that I had not just audio, but I had video so I could see. And if they're talking about a document, or I read lips. So, you know, in the case that the audio isn't 100% clear, you know, because I have a significant hearing loss, I can hear some, but I often piece together based on context and clues of the conversation in with like the key sounds that did come through. And so it's like super overthinking it. But if I can read lips, I'm miles ahead. So to me, I couldn't just do an audio. I would want to video record that. And so if I, who know how to handle myself, am thinking I might need that, the average person would certainly benefit from being able to be in there and recording their own transaction, not just anybody else. But when you have Social Security, because one of their rules that they do have on file, which I'm not even sure that they went through the proper procedures to have, I forget what it's called, but if they want to have a rule that's different from other GSA, you know, stuff and the CFRs, if they want to have something specific to their location, then they're supposed to go through the procedures to have this divergent, you know, specialized rule. Anyway, one of their policies, I believe it wasn't even considered a rule, but a policy, which you can't regulate people with policies, by the way. Policies are not rules in the United States. But anyway, when one of their policies...
Police will use force against you to enforce them, though, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Or they'll violently arrest you because you're supposedly violating an not an ordinance, a resolution, which is policy, not a law. But anyway, so anyway, my point is, with Social Security, they had this policy in place that was something about audio recording, and they didn't want you audio recording, you know, your own, it specifically was talking about you having your own session audio recorded unless there was specific permission or something like that. And I thought, that's asinine. I want to be able to listen later on to what they're telling me so I can follow their directions. I can
have an objective record.
Yeah. So I can go, okay, well, they told me to do what? I mean, it's overwhelming to sit there and try to write down all your notes, which I do. But, you know, what if I missed something in that, especially with my hearing disability? I'd like to be able to go back and go, oh, well, while I was concentrating on writing this down, I didn't catch that she mumbled that part. And that would have been great to be able to catch.
Can I ask on that point? I believe there's a section in Florida Constitution. I want to say 24A and B, but it says you're allowed to record any meeting with a public official. So if you have business with someone that works for the government, is that not a public official? And shouldn't you be able to make an objective record of what goes on between you and the government? Because a lot of it's under duress.
I mean, if you know which one it is, I can read it. I can go pull it.
24A and B. Let me see if I can look it up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna grab my because I have it printed out. So I'll grab it so when you know what it is, I can read it. But I don't remember there being a specific part in our Florida Constitution for that. But hold on.
Let me see. But yeah, sorry to interrupt. Another thing. All right, let her go. So let me see if I can find it too. Florida section 24A. See if that does anything. Another thing, gives citizens the right to inspect and copy public record. Okay. Specifically made exempt. There's a part that says public record, who can disclose, exempted. Oh, maybe I should share the screen. That would help, right?
Oh, you know what I just realized? This is like way too late, but I just realized I thought there was a way with StreamYard that I could have been streaming to my own channel this at the same time. But,
I mean, feel free to screen grab it and do whatever you want with this. That's fine with me. Records that could reveal records. Okay, let's see. Florida 24A Article 1 so gives citizens the right to inspect and copy public records. However, some records are exempt. Okay, so if you're
so which one are you?
With the public official, not a record. You're doing something that's official. You want an objective record of it.
Okay, you want me to look at...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Article 1, Section 24. I just got to catch up to where you're at.
Yeah. Give citizens the right to inspect and copy records. However, What is exempt? Can disclose. What is the penalty for disclose? Every person has the right to inspect, receive connection with the official business of any public file. The state person acting on the except with respect to records exempted. So to me, that means you got paperwork. You're meeting with the public official, and you pull out a camera and start recording this paperwork and this official conversation with an official. You should have the right to inspect, copy, and record, just like it says here in 24A of the Florida Constitution. Another thing I wanted to ask you, and if you want me to wait, that's fine. But as far as when you brought up Costco, I've heard in the past that you can go over a contract, and another thing is a lot of the contracts now are digital, where you just type your name in and you hit the button. And how the hell could they ever prove that you hit the button? Couldn't you say my cat ran across the desk and hit the mouse button? But besides that, a regular contract, like with Costco, let's say you printed it out, the part that says you got to come in person, you just strike it, right? Put parentheses around it, put your initials, and then return it back to them with the payment. And they accept it. Did they accept the struck contract, the new way it's written?
Yeah. So basically, the way contract law is written, and I was shaking my head at somebody's comment in there that's on crack. But anyway, sorry, wasn't shaking my head.
We get a wide variety of opinions here. You just let them flow, you know.
So
you don't have to acknowledge every single one. I don't either. I mean,
no, it just happened to catch my eye. So anyway, as far as the contract law question goes, I do that all the time. So let's take, for example, even my own surgeries and things that I had. And this was not elective surgery. My 3 surgeries were due to cancer, and a very fast spreading cancer, fast growing tumor. And so things had to be done very quickly. And they're trying to say, oh, well, the day of surgery, handing me all these documents, pages and pages to sign. And they expect, or even if they try to hand me something at a doctor's office ahead of time, just a few days ahead of time, they're expecting me to just sign it there without even reading it first. And I'm like, this is not how this goes.
Right.
So I'm, reading it and going through. In fact, when I needed my hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatments, insurance, they wouldn't cover the first 20, but they were covering the second 20, and I had to have it done at Advent Hospital in Daytona. No, 20 treatments.
Oh,
it's 2 hours each treatment, and so I ended up doing 40 treatments. Anyway, so when I'm trying to get set up there and they have all this paperwork, they're having me trying to get me to sign paperwork before they'll ever let me see the doctor. This is before my initial consultation with the doctor there, who's the medical director of the facilities, saying that, I'm going to do everything she tells me to do, and that I've had a chance to have all my questions asked and answered, and she's fully explained X, Y, Z things to me. And so I signed parts that I could, I crossed off what I couldn't, and I initialed. And then they're like, oh, well, that won't work. You have to sign this one, or you have to sign this one. And I said, but that didn't happen yet. I wouldn't sign that I had my questions answered when I haven't met with her.
Here's how that went. Hold on, Mrs. Henry. She actually read it. Okay, go ahead. You're probably shocked right there. Just the fact that you read what they gave you.
Well, they weren't having it. I mean, they were getting nasty with me. Well, she won't see you unless you've read it. And I said, well, you're going to deny me care because I'm saying that I can't sign something that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, you're asking me if the doctor answered all my questions before the doctor even let me ask a question.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then they said they would have me sign afterwards. So then afterwards, I met with her and everything. And it was I guess, not usual for their course of business, because at Advent Hospital Wound Care, they're not technically part of Advent Hospital. They're a third party, and they're used to doing wound care start to finish. Well, I had my one of my 2 surgeons was following me very closely 2 times a week. She was doing my wound care. She was debriding the wound. She was monitoring everything. So I wasn't going to do whatever they wanted me to do with the wound care. I was only there to get the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So anyway, they're trying to, the initial appointment starts where they're trying to force me into all that, they're asking me questions and I'm like, I don't mind her. She can take a look at the wounds. She can make sure whatever as it relates to the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, but I have a surgeon who's already overseeing me, and they know of each other. They know each other. So they can easily communicate. It turns out they had each other's cell phones and everything. So I'm like, they can call each other, but they need to figure this out. So anyway, in the course of that appointment, I ended up speaking with her, and that you could tell that she was irritated. She's like, well, it's a corporation, and the corporate, they require us to have this paperwork signed and everything. And I was like, well, yeah, I can sign after I've actually had it. She's like, well, you what problems do you have? All the doctors, all of them, well, what problems do you have with the paperwork? It's like, well, wait a minute. Why are you assuming I'm a problem or that I'm creating problems? Why do you have to word it like that? You could say, did you have questions that I might be able to answer for you? You could be nice and, not condescending and an asshole. But anyway, so I said, whatever my questions were and with the appointment. And I said, yeah. So she's like, well, you'll have to sign the paperwork, on the way out in order to begin the treatments. So I signed everything except for there was a form that was specifically and only for wound care. It had nothing to do with the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I said, well, there's literally nothing on this I can sign. And they're like, oh, well, we're not going to be able to treat you. And they were giving me all this hard time about it. And eventually someone somewhere, I guess, got their head out of their ass and realized I needed the care. My insurance was standing there with a checkbook actually open for those 20 sessions, ready to pay. So why not take the money and allow me to do the treatments, and not force me to do something else, that is not why I'm there. So
let me see if I understand this. That part of it is where they make their money. And if everyone came in, read the contract and did it your way, they would be out of a lot of money. Am I understanding that right?
I don't know if that's where all the money, I think they get a lot of money just from the generalized wound care, and the vast majority of their patients actually don't have hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Okay. In fact, they were only taking appointments in the mornings. They only had 3 chambers. So you might have like 6 patients on average each day that were doing that, because you're in there for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's not like, but I just actually saw my insurance because of the insurance issue I was having today. I went and looked at the benefits on that, and my insurance actually paid out to them like something. They were charging like $3,000 a session, which was insane. Right. And my insurance actually paid them like $1,400 a session, which is it blows my mind. But at any rate,
what is hyper? Say that again. What is that exactly?
Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, HBOT. So it's basically you're pressurized and you're brought to, so we breathe, I guess, like 22% oxygen in the air that we breathe. Mm-hmm. And the hyperbaric oxygen therapy is you're in a pressurized structure where you are then breathing pure oxygen, 100% oxygen. And you can only do that for a limited period of time. In fact, I was in there, my treatments were so long that I'd have to have 2 air breaks where they would literally is
that flammable?
Things are, so you're not allowed to wear anything. You have your own naked body, and then you can wear the clothes that they provide to you that they have made sure are not
static electricity and all that.
Well, just there's nothing
dangerous.
Yeah, you can't have metals, you can't have spandex.
What's the health benefit of getting 100% oxygen versus the regular 20 we breathe in now?
So tons, way too much, and it's not my doctorate is not in medicine. But if you have any kind of cancer, or pretty much if you have any big health issue, consider do the research on hyperbaric oxygen therapy, because there are a lot of scenarios where they can, where hyperbaric oxygen therapy can help. And for me, it wasn't even for my cancer, because I already had the surgery to remove the cancer. But at that point, it was the wound care, and my skin was not healing. My skin was turning, I had ischemia, which is where it's dying tissue. And then it was turning necrotic, which means dead tissue. And it was a large portion, of the tissue where they had reconstructed after my double mastectomy. So it was scary, but
Joe Rogan talks about that type of therapy. I think he did on one of his podcasts.
Okay.
So coming back to this contracting, just so everybody knows, whether it's business, whether it's a Sam's Club, whether it's whatever, you don't have to accept a contract on its face. You can literally strike out certain parts, initial it, return it back, and it's almost like, do you accept it this way, or do I need to change some, or do you want to change something? You don't have to just take it like the doctors give it to you, like the stores give it to you.
Right.
You
So there's
can.
there's a couple things to keep in mind. The general rule of thumb with contracts, with contract law 101, and I actually had a judge get this wrong in a court where I was litigating this. It's always when I'm a party too. It's when I'm the person that actually gets screwed, not just a client of mine. But anyway, if one person writes the contract, now generally if it's like a business and an individual, the business is the one writing the contract, right? Normally speaking. So anyway, anytime you have a contract between parties, the party who wrote the contract, if there's any kind of ambiguity in the contract, any kind of confusing part, it will be, it's supposed to be read against their interests and basically to the benefit of that ambiguity is going to be resolved to the benefit of the person who did not write the contract, right? So, which makes sense because the person who wrote it had the full opportunity to clearly and
articulate.
Plainly articulate exactly what they wanted. So now this is a real life example for you guys too. And again, it's the medical field. So when I went in prior to me going into my double mastectomy again, a life-saving surgery that I did not have a choice. I mean, I could have chosen not to have the surgery, but I mean, it was not a, what do you call that? An elective surgery. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to go in for surgery today. So prior to that, they gave me tons of paperwork, literally dozens of pages. And it's all super fine print. So it's good that I'm nearsighted and I can read all that. So I'm sitting in the lobby at Advent Hospital one day and I'm going through the paperwork ahead of time and I'm changing stuff left and right. I mean, I'm like, I do not consent for them to contact me to ask me to donate to their hospital foundation. No, thank you. I'm crossing that off. I do not consent to them giving any of my medical information to third parties. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that was in there. I did a whole video on it recently it was like September maybe. And so I definitely would advise anybody who just watch that video or listen to it. And I talk about some of the specific things that would surprise you to hear are in a huge hospital systems contract that you would be signing if you didn't, read it. So anyway, I'm going through and I'm changing and I'm crossing stuff off and, I'm putting my initials next to each of these changes. Now, here's the kicker at the very end, and I almost missed it because my mind is used to reading the meat, right? I'm not really too concerned about the titles of things or, signature lines, like the stuff that really doesn't really matter generally, but buried in at the very end where you think all the meat of the contract is done, it said something about, no modifications to this contract are going to be binding and it's just the pre-printed standard stuff and everybody's bound by that. Well, I crossed off that line and I initialed next to that because legally speaking, if I'm not agreeing to that part and I'm saying, nope, that doesn't apply here, then it doesn't apply here. And if they are trying to change it on their end, then, there needs to be something like the way that they do that. They don't even have anybody that's signing it. But if they're trying to hold me responsible, it's my signature that matters. If I'm trying to hold them responsible, it's their signature. That's kind of how it goes. And so, if the way that it boils down, if they were going to try to hold me accountable for something and say, oh, well, you can't make all these changes. Guess what I did? Bring me to court. I mean, it's it's contract law 101. So you can't be forced to accept terms of something. They should have looked at the documents and saw what I was doing and decide if they were going to treat me, I guess. But they can't deny me life-saving care because I don't want, my information sold to third parties. I didn't want to agree to medical medical supply, sales reps and stuff like that, or drug reps. in in the operating room or medical students. This is not an episode of Grey's Anatomy. This is my freaking life.
Right.
And some hospitals are teaching hospitals, and some scenarios it makes sense, but not every single surgery is something that should just, the patient has to waive all their all their rights away. And no, I only want the people that are trained professionals doing the work on me. So every single medical form that I had, they could have been the nicest, like my surgeon, the plastic surgeon that I've been seeing the most, because that's, who's following me up, and who has now done 2 of my surgeries. She's one of the nicest people. She's beautiful. She's young. She's smart. She's kind. She seems to really care about me and my situation. And, it wasn't her fault, the way that things went down and the wound care and all that extra stuff that I needed. Anyway, she doesn't draft the forms. I don't even know if she has an ownership interest or if she's just employed by this organization. Right. So, I'm not holding it against her, but I'm also not going to do the other side of things and go, well, she's super nice and I don't want to cause problems, so I'm just going to sign everything I need to just to get the whatever. No, it's my health. It's my body.
Yeah.
And it's my cancer.
And
So,
when they act like it's no big deal, it's really insulting too.
Exactly.
All right. So, right. Good. Great. Back to, listen, I want to have you on again to talk about all your stuff with Ormond Beach in Florida, but we're running an hour and a half already. So let's go back to the Phocion and Rogue Nation. You think the judge got it wrong. And there was, I don't know if it's a rumor, but there's some hearsay that says he at first agreed that they are allowed in there. And then somehow he made the verdict of guilty. Do they have a good appeal? Do you think they'll win on appeal? And let's finish it out with your explanation of how you think the judge did. Did he say they were right at first? Will they win on appeal? Go from there.
Okay, so I think it was the hearing we had in July, where it was after the trial. I want to say we had trial in May, and then we came afterwards for a hearing in July for essentially closing arguments, and then motions to dismiss were like renewed because, again, he hadn't ruled on them beforehand.
Mhm.
And so it was at that time that during oral argument, and I didn't do oral argument for Phocion. He did it for himself. There were a couple times where I spoke up and I clarified on something in strategic ways without stepping on the toes there and having 2 people.
I saw you
basically
were very, like not more like, hey.
Yep. So I would pass Phocion notes, or I would whatever I needed to make sure that I gave him the information. So anyway, so during the line of questioning, it became clear. So in the questions that the magistrate, the follow-up questions that the magistrate was asking of the prosecution, the U.S. Attorney's Office, it was clear.
He wanted jail time, by the way. Sorry. He wanted them to go to jail. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And initially he wanted them, I want to say they were each charged with 6 different offenses,
Right.
2 for each event, 2 different, supposed crimes for each occurrence. And anyway, he wanted, I want to say it was 30 days max jail for each of them. So they were looking at 180 days in jail is what he wanted for each of them. Plus $3,000 fine, I believe, for each offense, times 6. No, that's not even right. I want to say they could have each faced $30,000 of fines. I don't remember how the math would get us there, but maybe it was 5. At any rate, I think it was max that they would have been facing $30,000 in fines each. And he did, in the end, say he wasn't asking for the highest of fines. He actually asked for lower fines, which was good because the magistrate ended up saying he would have given them more fines. And I was like, what?
Well, he did want jail time, right?
He did ask for jail time, and the magistrate, thankfully, at least said he didn't think jail time was appropriate here. So here's the thing. The magistrate in that July hearing, when he was questioning the prosecutor, it was clear that he was understanding the concepts of being in a lobby, in the building foyer lobby entrance, and how, you know, you don't have an expectation of privacy with your documents. I mean, in your own, like, as you're holding them, sure, but like, you can't just sit there and start talking to the person next to you about your social security number and all of your private information and expect that somebody's not going to be next to you going, I'm going to write that down and I'm going to commit identity theft. Right? You don't have an expectation of privacy there. And he seemed to understand that. And there were some cases that talked about those distinctions between the A, B, and C we talked about earlier. And so the prosecutor was talking about forum, right? Because First Amendment is with speech, it's about the forum. And the problem here is they were applying a free speech claim to something that didn't work. And the judge or the magistrate at the time in July seemed to really understand that that's not appropriate here. And in fact, Foshin talked about court cases where you don't talk about forum analysis when you're not in the act of broadcasting your speech. When you're in the course of, well, I'm not going to say that just yet, but you're not in the stage of sharing it and broadcasting it out. You're still in the course of essentially creating it and forming that speech. You're gathering correctly. Yeah. Yes. Correct. That's exactly what's happening. So in that, it wasn't like Foshin or Rogue Nation went to the Social Security Administration and said, I am going to address the body of people here in this lobby, and I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about the GSA and how they do everything wrong. That's not anything what they're doing. And Foshin made a point to say that if you look at the videos that the prosecutor introduced into evidence, you could see that I'm silently recording. I'm not speaking to people unless they are speaking to me. And if they speak to me, then I will speak back to them. I'm not going to ignore them, but I'm not speaking to people. I'm not creating a scene. I'm not getting in the way. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm not participating in speech that is outward at that moment. I am preparing for that speech and I am monitoring my government. There's all kinds of other aspects of the First Amendment that are involved there. And even the aspect of press, you have the news gathering before you do the reporting. I mean, you can't have a reporter just show up on scene and start blabbering. No, they need to know what the heck is going on. They're watching, they're looking, they're listening. They're trying to figure things out before they can get in the mic and be on the camera and go, okay, so here is what we're seeing.
To be as accurate and objective as possible. Right.
Exactly.
To be as accurate and objective as possible. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the distinction. And when you are in the gathering stage of that, then it's not, you don't go into forum analysis where you're talking about what kind of forum is it. It's when you are in the speaking aspect. That's when you talk about, when you are actually sharing outwardly your speech of whatever kind, that's when you look at, okay, is this a traditional public forum? Is it a limited public forum? Is it not a traditional public, not a speaking forum at all? And so that analysis was totally irrelevant to the case at hand because we weren't talking about the videos afterwards, which would have been the expressive conduct.
Right.
We were talking about the charges stemmed from them doing the recording, not the outward expression. So the magistrate understood that and asked follow-up questions that clearly showed he understood that in July. And by December, when he gave his ruling and denied their motions and he explained, he is basing it all off. As soon as he mentioned the word forum, I was like, oh, crap. Here we go. And sure enough, the entire thing that followed after that was just a string of sentences about forum analysis that showed he was on the wrong track. And I knew that was going to happen.
You mean the judge, right?
The judge. Yep. Okay. When he was giving his decision. So I knew that what would happen, I knew the longer it took to get us into court, because there was no reason for that. And we were actually expecting to have a decision that day in July. And then he was like, well, we're going to have to reset it. And then I spoke up and said, Your Honor, I'm actually going to have a procedure, a cancer-related procedure. And I have all the dates for all those things, the pre-procedure and the actual surgery and then the follow-up and all that. I have those dates so I can make sure that, you know, we could schedule right now. And he said, no, don't worry about that. It probably won't be, you know, for at least a month or so. And so, but then, you know, August happened and September and October and November. And then we got the date, which is for December 20th. And I was like, wow. But also keep in mind, he was one of Biden's nominees. And in fact, he was confirmed. So he is now no longer a magistrate. He skipped the district court judge level, and he is now a court of appeals judge for the 11th Circuit.
He looked like he was late 20s, early 30s to me. He looked young, no?
Could be. I mean, I guess I was thinking he looked
His
like
name was
my
Embry,
age.
right? I'll look up his age here real second.
Kid. I thought his Embry Kid.
Oh yeah.
I think his last name
his
was
last
Kid.
name was Kid with 2 D's. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it just crazy that, you know, and as soon as I saw that and I sent a message to Foshin, and in fact, I think it was just like a day or two before his trial. I saw that, I was reading it, I was running errands in Port Orange. I'll never forget it. I screenshotted the article because normally I try to keep up on what's going on in the law, but I was like, I don't care about like Biden's latest, you know, nominations for Court of Appeals, because most of the time I don't know them. But I was like, wait a minute, I undeleted the email. I was like, well, I only know of one federal court magistrate off the top of my head. There's no way that it's going to be this one, but let me just see. So I hit undelete or undo, you know, and then I open it up and I read it and my eyes get all wide and I'm like, no way, it is the same magistrate. So I quick send a picture of the article to Foch, and I'm like, well, I guess now we know where his political leanings lie, and how this case might likely turn out now that we know that he's a Biden nominee. So anyway, he is very intelligent, very kind, very respectful, very intelligent. Unfortunately, and honestly, and Foshin might disagree with me about this, but I think the prosecutor is as well. Very kind, very respectful, very intelligent. It's just that they come from the frame of mind that it's the government sets the rules and we the people have to follow the rules. And that's what we're taught as growing up, and that's what we're taught in law school. You know, the government sets the rules and we have to follow them, and that's just the way that it is.
But lawyers know that there's unconstitutional laws, rules, whatever you want to call them. Otherwise, you know, slavery was legal, right?
But
yes.
What do most lawyers do when they're talking about something that's unconstitutional? They will instinctively go, oh, well, it's unconstitutional because case law says blah, blah, blah. And that's the thing. It's not up to, you know, the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's just it. Like if the U.S. Supreme Court says something's constitutional, then, oh, well, they never make mistakes. And so anyway, it's the court doesn't get to make law, and their job is not to interpret and translate the Constitution or laws. That's a whole nother video that we should do. But
so
anyway,
a prosecutor needs to be, this is the exact words. I can't have any critical thought about it. It says they could do jail. They should do some jail for assembling, gathering content inside of Social Security Administration. To me, that blows my mind that any man, human, regular person with a family could look at another American and say, that person should be in a cage for X amount of time because he walked into a public lobby with a cell phone recording.
So I will say that I think the case was stretched out for far too long. And by the time we had closing arguments on sentencing and whatnot on December 20th, by that point, the prosecutor was referencing things in the video that didn't happen. And I don't believe he intended to do that. I don't think he was trying to mislead the court. But he was saying things that made it seem like these guys were capturing the personal protected information of people that were there at Social Security, and they were, able to broadcast then their Social Security numbers and all of that other stuff, and get a look at these not classified documents, but documents that are, of a protected individual nature. But and so that was part of his reasoning for asking for jail time, and that was part of his arguments as to why, that essentially they needed to be made an example of for other people to not do this, but because he expressly said he feared that this was going to be something that would continue to happen within the First Amendment community. But then he also said that these individuals have done this repeatedly, and not just within the fact that this case had multiple different instances in it, but that they have other, stuff happening before and afterwards that showed it would be a repeated behavior. So in that sense, I don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I agree with it, but I get where he was coming from, because he's saying in the context of having people that are there if it was true that they were out there capturing sensitive private information from people and then broadcasting it on the internet, that would be a scenario where, now my rights as an individual who went into Social Security are being infringed. And so, we need to punish the person who's doing that.
Not the case here, right?
But it's not. And so that was a disappointment, but for that, and but for the fact that he couldn't grasp that, our rights are inherent. We start with rights. Government came after our rights. God gave us our rights first. Government was established and created after that point simply to protect our rights, and all laws and all government regulation on the people whatsoever, every single aspect of that should only be in place to the extent that it protects our rights. Anything outside of that, anything that's going to infringe upon our rights, government has overstepped. And it's just that we have this government that has grown so vast and so big, and there's so many laws at so many levels. And it's not just the actual statutes. I mean, you're talking about Code of Federal Regulations. You're talking about administrative rules, regulations, and procedures. You're talking about policies and ordinances, and you have all kinds of things, right? And it's just so overwhelming. You have court rules, and you have court cases that create, precedent, opinions and orders. All these things go into what is considered law by government officials, and we need to reel that back in. Our biggest fight is going to be able to reel all that back in, so the only laws are actually laws. And we can recognize that, judicial branches and executive branches don't make laws. Executive orders are never laws. Executive orders, resolutions, administrative rules and procedures cannot constitutionally be used to regulate the people.
Right.
So anyway, that's where it's some of these things that are just, I don't want to say even more abstract, but more removed. And we're talking about the way things should be here. And we're just so used to dealing in, but this is the way that it is. It's a descriptive versus the normative. And we need to change that. So at any rate, I have hope for people like the prosecutor and the judge in that case, the magistrate, because they are intelligent and they look like they were trying to do the right thing, but they were misguided in their sense of what is the right thing.
Sure. I agree with that. Misguided as hell. So what are their chances on appeal?
So legally speaking, they should have won their motion to dismiss. They properly laid the foundations. I believe that both laid enough foundation on the record one way or another to be able to win on appeal. But, who that appeal ends up in front of really, unfortunately, that's the key, right? Who is going to get that? What judge is this going to land on their desk and they're going to look at it, and are they constitutionally minded or not? Right. Are they going to grasp and understand these concepts that we were just talking about? Or are they going to go, well, there was a sign that showed you can't take pictures, and so they took pictures.
And that's where you really lose confidence in the system, is when even a judge will say the same thing that the clerk at the post office is saying.
Mhm.
That is when you really lose faith in any type of credibility the system had before. Because if a judge doesn't know, come on. I mean, where are we at that point?
Right. So that's the thing is, if it was just a purely, mathematical or scientific calculation, right? I would say 100% they will win. They have every right to win. But are they going to? Mm.
So realistically, depending on which judge they get, it's really still a coin toss.
It is. And it's going to be that way. But let me back up and say it is that way on every case, on every kind of case, criminal or civil, all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, because, in theory, the good side has control over the court these days, but that it doesn't always play out that way. And even the good judges on the good cases, like the Bruin case or the Dobbs case that overturned Roe v. Wade, those kinds of cases that happened in, I think it was 2022. Anyway, those were in the right direction, but not a single one of them came out and just spelled out, this is unconstitutional, period. And here's why. They made it about, the history and the this and the that, and you have to look at all. Stop complicating it. Stop talking about all this, case law bullshit. What it comes down to is, does the Constitution say you have a guaranteed right to keep and bear arms? Oh, it does. Who gives a shit how many times there's been laws on the books, how long the laws have been on the books, trying to stop or infringe that right? Yeah. The Constitution is the Constitution. You can't just make up some new, way of going, well, it's, as long as that law was on the books when the Constitution was enacted. No. So anyway.
Katherine Henry, everyone, please donate to her. Let's get some final thoughts. And I could listen to you all day. So let's do this again if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
And we can talk about your Ormond Beach, and we can talk about anything you want. And people, you should go to her channel, go to this webpage here, and her channel is listed right here. Brandon Mitchell put it here. This is where you can donate to her, get her bar certified, help her out with her medical stuff. She put in 100 hours for Foshin. She's doing it. She's doing it right. Obviously, you don't hear very many constitutional attorneys to begin with, much less such a. So why Constitution for you? You said you weren't always Constitution. We'll finish out with this. You said what made you veer in that, and not only just veer in that, but you're wholeheartedly expressing what I've been saying since I was a young guy, and everybody's parents were saying if that was true, it'd be on TV. Well, we know now that's not the case because the internet has destroyed all them ridiculous narratives that if it was true, it'd be on TV. We know they lie. So let's finish on with that. And I can't thank you enough, Katherine. Please donate to her, and let's do this again, please.
Yeah. So, and just to clarify to those people that maybe were joining later and didn't hear earlier, I am already a licensed attorney. I'm admitted in 5 or 6, I can't even remember, jurisdictions
Just
right
not
now.
in Florida right now.
Just not in Florida.
Yeah.
I was temporarily admitted to Florida Federal District Court in the Middle District of Florida for Foshin's case, pro hoc vice. But the state of Florida would be a whole nother ball game for me to be able to help people down here. So anyway, so just for those of you who were like coming in at the end of that conversation, and you might hear that go, oh, she's not even a real attorney.
No.
Oh, I'm a real attorney.
Not in Florida.
Yeah. So anyway, the biggest thing, so before I ran for state rep in 2015, 2016 in the state of Michigan, did not ever think I would do such a thing, because in Michigan, state rep, it's a 2-year position, and it's like, why would I do that? I have all this other stuff going for me. I owned my own law firm. I ran a ministry. I did all this other stuff. I was a homeschooling mom. I was like, I had 4 kids and one was a baby. I was like, I can't possibly take on another thing. But when God calls you to do something and you understand that is what God is calling you to do, then you better damn well do it. And that's what he called me to do, was run for state rep. So I did. And in the course of that work, I got to see later why he was calling me to do that. And some of it culminated as far as later on out as 2020. But at any rate, during the course of the race, I was connected with an organization that worked on constitutional issues. And so in 2015, I don't remember, 2016, I think it was, I actually started working on my first set of U.S. Supreme Court briefs. In fact, Hawaii versus Trump administration, I think was the name of the case. I didn't get to have my name on the first couple of briefs that I worked on because I wasn't officially admitted at the U.S. Supreme Court yet, but I worked on those briefs and worked on several briefs and was helping with different aspects of things. I ended up being asked to write an amicus brief in the Michigan Supreme Court February of 2020. And you think, well, it's just a custody case. It has nothing to do with anything. But man, God works in mysterious ways. The main issue that I was writing on was on the issue of forced vaccination for actually a 4-year-old child. Dad wanted all the vaccines and all at once, and mom said no. And it was, based on, medical, scientific issues that were going on with the family. But anyway, I came in and I actually represented an organization, Physicians for Informed Consent, and wrote an amicus brief in the Michigan Supreme Court. And that was my first one where I was flying solo. Had never written a brief all by myself. I had been working on like the meat of briefs, but I didn't have to ever have to know like how do you actually file it and all that kind of stuff, because it was always like administrative people that did all those other things. Mm-hmm. And so this was the first time I was like thrown to the wolves. And it was February of 2020. Lo and behold, would I have to use those skills later on that very year, that very spring, to end up filing brief after brief in the Michigan Court of Appeals and the Michigan Supreme Court to fight the governor. And so I was actually one of 3 attorneys who argued against the governor's executive orders in the Michigan Supreme Court in 2020. And we won that case. Unfortunately, the court didn't listen to me. And I told them, I was the only one that said, and I said it from as early as April of 2020, by the way, we can't just focus on this Emergency Powers Act and this Emergency Governor Act stuff over here, Emergency Management Act. We have to recognize that she's going to then turn to the Public Health Code and use these set of statutes to try to do the same thing and issue executive orders. And so what happened? Well, as soon as the court only focused on those 2 statutes that she was using at the time, she immediately turned and started using the Public Health Code and issued orders, emergency orders that way. And anyway, so if they would have just listened to me, they could have saved the headache and heartache for a lot of people, millions of people across Michigan. But anyway, so I started doing that. I was the only attorney that argued it was unconstitutional from day one with her executive orders. And I was the only attorney that didn't get paid a dime. I was working on donations on behalf of the people across the state of Michigan. And back then, because I was the only attorney that was speaking out against the government from day one on all of it, I did have a lot of donations coming in. And so I thought, well, I can continue to do this. I had enough donations coming in that it was covering all of my expenses to be able to, drive to places, have gas money to drive to places and speak on these constitutional issues, or, have filing fees to be able to file with the Michigan Supreme Court. And all these, all these things. So, unfortunately, in the last couple of years, each year has just been less and less funds that are coming in, to the point where we paid out of pocket an insane amount last year, like, I don't know, $3,000-4,000, just out of pocket that donations didn't cover, just to be able to have the bare bones of doing all this work. So anyway, if you guys are able to go to that page that's up on the screen, you can donate if you just maybe, health is kind of your thing and you're concerned because of, the fact that we're going broke on the cancer side of things. Click that support Katherine's family and it'll go to me. Or if you want to support the work that we're doing, or either of the 2 cases that we have going on right now, that goes into the business account. So anyway, there's different ways to donate, and I appreciate whether it's a one-time donation, whether it's a recurring donation, whether it's, only $5 or whether it's $5,000. Every little bit helps and can help me continue to turn around and help other people do what they need to do.
Just for coming on my show, I just put a permanent link to your donate page, and I'm gonna have it in every single video I post.
Wow, thank you.
Really appreciate that, Catherine. It was such a pleasure to meet you. I could talk to you forever. Next time, let's get into talk about whatever you want, whether it's the income tax, whether it's the foreign wars. I mean, all the stuff everything that's on your page. I'm just gonna binge watch, and we could talk about it again if you're willing to do so.
Absolutely, yeah.
I can't thank you enough. Everybody, donate if you can, a few bucks to Catherine. Let's get her whatever bar thing she needs to do in Florida and help her with her medical. She deserves it. Give it to her. She is worth it. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye, Catherine.
Bye.
Guys, how about that? How about that for a patriot? How about that? How many patriots like that do you know? Especially that are lawyers. It's unbelievable. And she was being nice to that prosecutor, man. That between that prosecutor and the prosecutor at Liberty Trolls trial, I mean, I get red hot mad, dude, when they want to put somebody in a cage for an extended period of time for recording in public. I mean, they didn't disseminate, they didn't record any, they literally just stood there, and everyone's little genitals got little sand in them, and they can't handle it, and they think they're authority, and they think they're better than you. But this lady fights in a different manner. I'm a loudmouth. She's an articulate, well-trained, educated woman, and I'm just I'm just a goof. Honestly, let's be honest. I want to play pool and eat as many sandwiches as I can eat before I die. She is a driven, intelligent patriot. Subscribe to her. Throw her a few bucks. She was wonderful. You guys are wonderful. Thank you so many people for being here. Can't thank you enough. If you want to subscribe to me for 99 cents a month, give it to me. I'm worth it. Give it to me. I'm worth it. Give it to me. I'm worth it just for shutting up that whole time and letting the intelligent people in the room speak, aka not me. So one more time, this is her thing here. Throw her a few bucks and tell her we really appreciate people like her, man. In the meantime, I'm gonna dice some onions really fine, put them in my stainless steel, get them sweating. You know what the onions said when I put them in the pan? They're like, "Why you sweating me, bro?" I go, "Cause you're an onion, fool." I'm gonna crisp up some bacon. I'm gonna throw some mushrooms in there, and then some heavy cream. I'm put some Parmesan and some angel hair. I'm gonna toss it up, and I'm gonna flip it, and I'm gonna rub it, and then I'm gonna put a fork in it, and then I'm gonna gorge myself, and then I'll take a nap for like 2.5 hours. You know, that's it. Oh, I guess I'm doing another live tonight. I forgot it was Tuesday. So at 8 o'clock tonight, we'll be doing a live. I don't know what video we're covering. I don't know what we're doing. But in the meantime, thanks so much for Katherine Henry for coming on. Thanks to all of you for showing up here. There's a link to her page there. Much love to everybody. Thanks, Brandon, for all the posts. Thanks, everybody, for coming. That's it, man. That was a great show. Oh, thank God you said something, dude. Next Monday, I think we said 1 p.m. Next Monday at 1 p.m., I am free. Inland Auditing Media, Steve Gandalf McStevenson will be live on the John Flax channel. We're just going from one patriot to another here. Also, UK Manny Pants, the first auditor in Britain, is going to do a live with me. I'm just trying to, I think that's Friday. I think that's coming this Friday. Friday. You guys ever hear the joke? The Greek used to go to the Chinese restaurant and say, "Hey, what day is today?" And they would say, fly day. And the Greek thought it was funny. You can't say Friday. So the Asian guy got mad and he started working on his Friday. He was like, Friday. So finally the Greek comes in again, and one of these Fridays comes in and he goes, "Hey, what day is it?" And the Chinese guy goes, "Friday." And the Greek goes, "What'd you say?" He said, "I said Friday, you gleesy gleek." What? You stupid. You stupid. There's every time I crack a joke at the pool hall, there's a lady there. She goes, "You stupid." She says stupid. She doesn't put the D on the end. You stupid. All right. Man, why are you guys fighting in the comments, man? I'm just going to ignore that stuff. So, Katherine Henry, I'm John Flax. And I approve this message. All right, everyone. We good? All right, everyone. Guys, please go watch my last video, too, where I redressed the hell out of Clearwater and their crimes and called them out and brought my own gavel. It should have got 1 million views, but somehow my channel's 4,000 views, even though I have 250,000+ subscribers. I don't think YouTube likes me that much, but whatever. We're fighting the power. Thank you, Sly Shy, and thank you, everybody, for showing up. Have a good day. Much love. Thanks again, Katherine. You are amazing. You are a unicorn amongst unicorns.